and it's been lovely. If you can keep yourself muted, that'd be great. Thank you, Matthew.
Right, so we just did a wonderful reading from Buddha, and I wish to follow through with a lot of the science behind all of that. When I first got into spirit 20 odd years ago, a lot of it was science-based, and I love the saying that comes from that, which says, we test, we trial, and we prove to ourselves. It's one of the sayings that we have with our church. And when we test something, it becomes a truth for ourselves. And with truth, we have trust. And that's when we come to spirit and we trust spirit. So I just want to talk about, there's always two words I always have to give. And the first one is intent. Intent is one of our most powerful things that we have. And as Buddha was saying in his reading, the thought manifests into the words. The intent that we start with creates in the mind, and then it comes out, doesn't it? It goes out to the universe, it goes to wherever it needs to go. And the more we hang on to that thought, the more that we carry that thought, the more it hardens into our character. It makes us who we are. So by the things that we're told and the things that we believe within ourselves, it causes an effect on ourselves. I'm a big quantum physics person. I love science. Many of those that may have attended to one of my workshops. I've always loved a gentleman called Dr. Emoto, messages from water molecules being manipulable by positive or negative charge. Do have a look up. It's a great way of working with your healing as well. I get asked, how long should healing be? And so I had to do a bit of a science behind that too, and I had a look at the body and the molecule structure, and we know that molecules are multiplying in the body every second, and I had to actually work out how many seconds that molecules were. So 2.5 million molecules per second are multiplying within the body. And if you imagine that those molecules are affected by any thought that you have, 2.5 in 1 second is a lot of molecules. So you've got to be really careful what thought you carry, because even in that 1 second that you carry it, there's 2.5 million molecules being affected. And of course, we understand that there's no cell in our body older than 3 months, no organs older than 3 years, and no bone or fat older than 7. So every 7 years, we're replacing ourselves. So as those molecules die and replace themselves, they pass on information. So it's really important that the positiveness that we carry charges our molecules and passes it on to the next molecule, if that makes sense. Jumping into the quantum physics side of the world, there's this experiment called the double split experiment. And these were molecules fired at a 2-split frame. And as it went through, it was kind of random. And they went, this doesn't work. Let's have a look. We put a camera there. And as soon as they put a camera there, it changed. And then the scientific community went, wow, what's happening? When we look at things, they change. When we don't look at things, they just act randomly. And so when we, as an observer, look at the environment or the things around us, we change and we make an effect, cause and effect. And the saying is, the observer causes the effect on the environment. Imagine your body being the environment. And every time you have a thought, it causes an effect on your body. I know plenty of you would have followed Louise Hay. I was a big Louise Hay fan back in the day when I first started. And she had a list of all these things that we were telling ourselves that was causing either a dis-ease in the body. And we were getting these things called cancer and untreatable bowel syndrome, things we couldn't fix. And then she's got a wonderful place in America, and that a lot of people go diagnosed who can't be fixed by medical science. And she sits down and she dissolves the resentment that has been held within the body, and people cure themselves. And again, like I said, there's no cell older than 3 months, no organ older than 3 years. So it only takes 3 years to change a person's biological structure. My daughter went through a fibroid cyst on a uterus wall at 18, and this was the youngest ever known in the country. And we had a specialist do a lot of work, and we went and did a lot of operations, and then we had to go through the methotrexy injections, and we actually knocked a whole year off, and a lot of the doctors were quite impressed. And again, I put it down to the water that we were charging positively. So all of my bottles of water had love, peace, and healing on it. And of course, the extra healing that we were doing with her. So we were actually absolutely stoked to be able to knock a whole year off her treatment. So it is possible. And again, it happens because we see it in front of us. It happens because we have to go through these things. It was one of the most devastating things I went through at the time. And I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I learned a lot when you go through it. And I did sort of question spirit. Why was this happening? Where was my protection? Why was this occurring to my daughter? Have I been a bad boy? And of course, all these things go through our minds. But again, I wouldn't have learned the lesson I would have learned had I not gone through that. So I learned a lot about biological structure and things like that. And again, I like to pass that information on because we are all healers, and we're healers by thought first. And when we see somebody that is needing some upliftment, then it is as it says, our intent. We send our intent out with every good action and deed that we do. Beautification of our house in heaven is awaiting. So there's no ever wasted thought or deed or action, even though we think it might be the smallest things and we can't actually do it. But sending out the intent is really important. And after the intent, we have the attunement. And of course, attunement happens after years and years of practice, or the vibrational shift within the body. And it doesn't necessarily have to take years. People can attune to spirit very quickly if their vibrational shift within themselves is a higher self that allows spirit to connect. We were very low density matter in the physical, and spirits obviously have a high vibration. And so one has to raise its vibration, as we do in the lower, and they have to lower their vibration in spirit. And that's when we have the medium come together. And that's that little veil that we get to be able to talk between and be able to spend time allowing them to be with us. You know, a lot of the times that they are with us, we're not listening. And reading through this wonderful book again of Arthur Finlay, there's been many mentions in there of spirit saying, we are talking to you, you're just not hearing us. And this is happening just so often. And a lot of that comes down to our own intuition, our gut feeling. When we feel that gut feeling and then ignore it, and then later go, oh, I should have listened to my gut feeling. That was spirit. That was that moment that spirit spoke to us and said, hey, listen up. And I like to make a little way of understanding how we can communicate with spirit. These things on our body called the valvulus hairs, the most finest ones are on our earlobes. These are very fine white hairs, and they secrete water. And if you imagine electricity and water don't really mix, well, it's perfect for spirit. So what they can do is they can come along and just give you a bit of a scratch or a tickle on the back of your ear. And next time you're scratching your ear, listen to the thought that may be occurring in the mind, because, you know, spirit will be talking to us. 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. We need to identify when spirit's talking to us. So this is a beautiful way. It's a personal connection way. Test, trial, and prove it to yourself. Next time you're scratching your ear, listen to what spirit's saying. Write it down. Or if you see somebody scratching their ear, just ask them, hey, what was the thought that you just had? And just see whether or not there's some anything behind it. Test it, trial it, and prove it to yourself. Because if you do prove it to yourself, it becomes your own. Yeah. My personal experience was I started this. I thought, nah, I can't do it. This is, you know, there's no way I'll be able to do this. And my first one, and I still remember it today, and it'll be like any medium who has done clairvoyance. And I said to this lady, I've got your grandfather, something about Alcatraz, a watch in San Francisco. They're the most weirdest, bizarrest things that have just popped in my mind, and I have no idea why they're there, but I'm going to give that to you. And she turned around and says, yes, that's my grandfather. I have his watch. Yes, I do remember the San Francisco trip. And yes, we did go to Alcatraz. And in that moment, something happened. I went, okay. So there is this thought pattern that happens that is influential from the outside. I didn't create this. I didn't read this person's mind because this person wasn't thinking of those thoughts. So it's not a psychic ability. I didn't pick up on the thought that she was having. Somewhere externally, somebody dropped that thought into my mind, and I was able to give those bits of information, and it communicated it and worked well for that person. The wonderful thing about evidential mediumship, it's not about the medium. It's about the recipient, the person receiving the information. It's their personal piece from spirit. That's what's the most greatest thing. And it only happens once you've received it. I know many people have been frustrated about receiving from mediums and they didn't get what they wanted. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. But when they get that one, it makes a big difference to their life, because it really proves to them that spirit's with them. And so it can be very frustrating for a lot of people who haven't received a very strong evidential medium or message. And once you do, it's a big change in a lot of people's lives. So I always go back to intent and attunement. Please, if your intent is the most valuable thing that you take from my wonderful address today, remember that it is 2.5 million cells per second, multiplying with your intent. So just to continue to have that right intent. And every time you have that right intent and that good deed, just remember there's a beautiful piece being added to your mantelpiece at your wonderful house of heaven. So continue to do good work and good deeds will happen to you. So God bless, love you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.